Excuse me. Buster was yawning, and you know how when somebody yawns it sets you off. Oh, hang on a minute. Teddy's trying to tell me something. Buster promised to go with you to the duck pond to feed the ducks, but he fell asleep. And he said he was having such a nice dream that he stayed snuggled up in his bed. Oh dear, I'm sure Buster didn't mean to not keep his promise. Actually, that reminds me of a story in the Bible. Now, this story is all about God being a promise keeper. Whenever you hear God promised, you shout, God promised. Let's give it a go. God promised. God promised. Very good. Okay, let's see what's in the story bag. It's a key, which must fit a lock. Now, if you remember last week, we heard how Jeremiah told the people that God promised, God promised, that he would free them from their exile after 70 years. Well, now, that time was almost up, but life was hard, and the people wanted to know why. It's a phone, which you can listen to someone calling you. Zechariah was a prophet living at this time, and God promised to give them the words to explain. He told the people that they should not be like their ancestors who rebelled and refused to listen, but that they should turn back to God. Oh, it's a tiara. Oh, it's like a crown, like royalty would wear. Now, because God promised, King Cyrus became king of all Persia, including Babylon, and announced to all the people in exile there that they were free to go back to Jerusalem and rebuild God's temple. Oh, look, it's Kipper with his bedtime blanket. Oh, he looks very sleepy. Zechariah liked sleeping because he had lots of good dreams. Can you pretend that you're snoring and dreaming? Now, in these dreams, God spoke to Zechariah, and God promised that he would forgive his people. And God promised that he would send them a Messiah from the house of David who would ride on a donkey, be like a shepherd, and set them free. So God kept his promise then to forgive his people, then, and to set them free. And he gave them a promise of hope for the future, that he would send them Jesus and forever set them free. I think I need a Bible verse to help me remember that God is a promise keeper. Mr. Bible, do you have a verse from the Bible to help us remember that God is a promise keeper? You do? Shall we see what he's got today? Hebrews 10:23. Let us hold on firmly to the hope that we have confessed. We can trust God to do what he promised. Hebrews 10:23. When all the teddies were sleeping and the sun had gone to bed, up jumped the children and this is what they said. God has promised he is with us, God has promised he will stay, God has promised that he loves us, God has promised he's the way. Shh. When all the teddies were sleeping and the sun had gone to bed, up jumped the children and this is what they said. God has promised he is with us, God has promised he will stay, God has promised that he loves us, God has promised he's the way. So Teddy, we learned today through the story of Zechariah that God kept his promise and the people of Judah finally got to go home to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. Oh yes, and that God had another promise for them, that God would send his son Jesus. And our Bible verse said that we can trust God to do what he promised. Buster says he's now able to go to the pond, so you're both off to go and feed the ducks. He has kept his promise then. Brilliant. Let's pray before you go. Dear God, thank you that you are a promise keeper and that you have a good plan for us yesterday, today and tomorrow. Help us to keep our promise to love you as you love us. Amen.